Hello and welcome to another episode of Contra Mundum. I am your host, Pastor Andrew Isker, and with me is my co-host, CJ Engel. Hello, CJ. How was your week? How are you doing?
Good. It's finally getting a little warmer for me, so I'm a little bit stuffy in the jacket. But as you can see, I'm up against the wall, and I'm enjoying it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's we're recording on a Thursday. So it's not a golf Friday today for either of us. So maybe we should record on Fridays now that it's warm in California.
I hate warm. I'm against summer.
I let it be known. I love summer. All 6 weeks of summer that we get here in Minnesota, I think it's great.
Yeah, because your winters though are just horrific. So
yeah, they're pretty rough. You get cabin fever by Christmas. So it's tough. It's a hard, but we're tough people here in Minnesota. But as far as things going on this week, we could jump right into our discussion. Earlier this week, there was a lot of controversy online over people fleeing blue states and blue cities, particularly to go to greener pastures, to go to better places to raise their families and so forth. And so a lot of controversy over that. I mean, what did you observe from it? I mean, I've commented a little bit about it online, but what did you observe from all of that, CJ?
I think conservative Christians are just like desperate for controversy. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like one person recognizes his own need to make a specific decision based on his own life and circumstances, and the well-being of his family and the obligations and duties that he has in light of a whole bunch of other aspects of what's going on in the world. And like the idea that like sharing that and helping other people make the same decision in revolutionary times is going to strike up this like controversy. It's just a sign of our like decay and our need to like have, to look at bigger things, like that's, I think that's the thing that stands out the most. I mean, obviously I think Joel would probably be the guy that started all this off just by publishing his book and just by talking about, he lived in California.
Yeah. So let's back up. Joel Webbin. You're
sorry.
talking about his book. Yeah. I didn't even introduce his book, but so much of it is centered around criticism of Joel Webbin's book about that topic about fleeing, these places. Yeah, he was in, I believe, Southern California. Now he's in Texas, near Austin. And so, yeah, that just a big firestorm from people, losing their minds over the idea that and so much of it too, I think, is because Joel is he's like me, very post-millennial, very optimistic, wants to fight, all of these things. And so there are kind of these cheap shots, taken by the dispensationalist, premillennial rapture people who are also very pietistic, very very biblicistic in the sense where they want to apply this straightforward biblical morality in this very narrow way, outside of any prudential concerns. And so, all these cheap shots taken like that, where it's like, oh, you say you're post-millennial, but then what about California? Do you not have any hope for the gospel there? And it's just really, really simplistic, silly, bad arguments that were being trotted out. I mean, it was hard to take it seriously, to be quite honest. It was hard to take these guys seriously because they aren't very well thought arguments. They aren't very, for all those factors that you bring up. There are so many things for every individual circumstance that you have to take into account. You have to take into account employment, the community that your children are growing up in, and what they're around, how safe it is, just in terms of like crime. I mean, that's what some of these guys like just refuse to admit, the time of day that we're in, that there are places where crime is legal in the United States of America. So why would you live in them? Right? Why would you live in those places and have your little kids, having to dodge bullets all day long? You're right. Insane.
Yeah. I mean, these are the same people that tell like heroic immigration stories from like Nazi Germany and stuff. Like these are the same people that share like that are like promoting like Corey Ten Boom stuff. Like what? Well, why didn't the Jews just stay there in Berlin?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah,
maybe
just
I don't
yeah,
like it's well.
yeah,
See,
it's silly.
yeah, it's silly. It is stupid. I'm also not one of those people that thinks like that people have to flee California.
Yeah.
Like I mean, California is a difficult state. It's almost impossible to talk about unless you are actually familiar with the variety of California. But like, let's take a look at your state. I mean,
Yeah.
you have roots there for sure, and you have a community there for sure that depend on you and you on them. And you're having to be confronted with brand new situations that may or may not impact your own decision. But like everyone's called to a different situation. The idea that we have to leave California because it's immoral to live here, I don't take that position at all.
Mhm.
I also don't take the position where if someone's actually going to flee out of like LA or San Francisco or Berkeley or any of these other places, that's completely legitimate. Like there's
Yeah.
no like it's such a stupid controversy. It's worth talking about only in the sense that it's stupid,
Yeah.
to get caught up in it.
Yeah, that's been my perspective the whole time too. Is like I don't take it seriously in terms of like an actual, intellectual discussion that we have to be rigorous about and consider these points and really think deeply about. Although we're thinking deeply about our own perspective and why people would want to do things they do, but it's it's beyond that. Like even like some of the thing. I mean, there's so many things we could say. So much that is silly about this is you look at the 20th century, look at 20th century America, and you already had a mass exodus out of cities into these places called suburbs. And no one said, "Oh, that's bad. You have to stay in these cities. They're hives of crime and decay and destruction. You have to raise your children in these places." Nobody said, "No, you can't move out to the suburb and do that." But that's precisely what happened,
Mhm.
right? All of the cities were destroyed, right? All of the major cities in the 20th century were just ransacked by crime, uh, by urban decay, homelessness, all the problems of the 20th century and into current year, were created by political policies, right? They were actively created for us, and people, voted with their feet. They moved away.
Mhm.
People ask often, like, why are all of the cities these blue strongholds, right? Why are the city governments all dominated by Democrats and things? Because it wasn't always the case. That wasn't always the case. You had cities that were strong Republican places, even before, even places that didn't have big political machines operating, like Chicago or New York City. And so you had major cities in America that were well run, were orderly, were clean and safe environments for people to live in, and all of that was destroyed in the 20th century. People left
Mhm.
and they moved to the suburbs. And so this is the same type of phenomenon, really, but it's at a state level rather than a city level. And so to make it like, no, you need to stay in this place and LARP like you're living in the first century and just wait to be fed to the Roman lions or whatever. Like that's the perspective some of these guys have, and it's so ludicrous. Take for instance like New York City. Like right now, Daniel Penny is being charged with what is it? Is it manslaughter, murder, whatever for restraining a drug-addled, insane criminal
Mhm.
who was threatening to kill people. Right? They charged this guy with murder or whatever. They're charging him. Right? Self-defense is not allowed in these places. You can't defend yourself or your neighbors against these horrible things. Same thing with Daniel Perry in Texas. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse is an example of this, where the legal system is set up to attack normal, decent people who are defending themselves from criminals.
Mhm.
And so, right, how can you not take that into account with where you live?
Yeah, there's a really good I think it was John Harris who shared the quote from John MacArthur saying that we're not obligated to stay and be persecuted. Like he said this like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Like no individual is obligated to have this universal reaction to political circumstances. He gave
Yeah.
the example of Paul who fled on multiple occasions. Many of the apostles did. Jesus himself fled
Yeah.
on multiple occasions.
Multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called tactical repositioning. I think that that's important to
Yeah.
think of it as tactical repositioning. You know, it's not the Benedict option all the time. It's
Yeah.
you're repositioning for something greater. Like the people that have a problem with like they have a moral problem with you living in California because of California's horrendous immoral laws, which is true. Like California is one of the worst offenders. They're
Yeah.
like one of the leading edges of like the woke revolution. But the idea that we have to all flee California also doesn't take into account how much your taxes are funding some of the most grotesque and immoral activities by the U.S. federal government. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to make that argument, then you need to leave America.
Yeah.
Like, none,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. And so neither of us, I think I could speak for both of us that, we both live in
So,
these,
so
these,
my
these same
my
blue states. My state's the same way. It's one of the it's the leading,
yeah,
hive of degeneracy in the Midwest. And um that's the Twin City, but the rest of the state is largely really great. It's my town is a great place to live. Now is the degeneracy spreading? It absolutely is everywhere, but it's also spreading into red states and red communities and all these places. It's unavoidable because of mass media and social media and so forth.
yeah.
And so the contagion is spreading everywhere. The question is more a prudential one. Do you want to live in a place where crime is legal and where the legal system will be arrayed against you if you are forced to defend yourself against criminals? Like, I think that's one of the biggest factors. The other one is if they're passing these laws, like my state passed this law, your state is about to pass a law where they can take your children away from you and trans them.
Right.
Right. That is, if there is a red line to leave a place, that's the one. Right.
Mhm.
So I don't begrudge
Well,
anyone
see,
that wants to leave because of that.
but this is why there's variety here. This is why I'm really serious about my answer being that it's particular to your own
Yeah,
situation. If you don't
absolutely.
have kids and you're willing to fight in your city and your grandparents and great grandparents settled here, go do that. You don't need
Absolutely.
to run. If you have children and they're like on the front line of like the left's like propaganda and their own disgusting infiltration of your family, then leave. But like you
Yeah.
don't I don't think there's any universal law here or
No.
universal moral obligation here.
And yeah, to be fair to Joel's book, that's not what he's arguing there or anywhere else. Is that everyone has to leave these blue places or you're sinning? Like that's how some of these people framed it, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah, exactly. There were people replying to me in my comments saying
Mhm.
that I was being immoral by staying in California and having my taxes fund the California
Fund it.
state.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's what I was referring about a couple of minutes ago when I said
yeah,
then your only solution is to leave America, or if you can't get into Hungary, to commit suicide. You know what
yeah.
I
I mean,
mean?
that's exactly
Yeah.
that's what they. You
So
box yourself in that way. I mean, it's the same thing with like if you boycott one company, you have to boycott all the woke companies because they're all woke. And it's like no, you need to be tactical about it. You need to like um you can't boycott them all, so boycott just Target and Budweiser and things like that. That's way more effective,
yeah,
way more effective.
yeah.
So
Also, like I'll say this too, California was one of the worst states in terms of like masking and lockdown stuff,
yeah,
but they couldn't touch my area because none of the sheriffs were participating. They wouldn't
yeah,
do anything about it. And in fact, they were preventing protesters from causing public disturbance by protesting restaurants that refuse to close down. And so, like, if there's an actual scenario like that, and the community does refuse to comply with state actions on things like the trans kids, like those can be situational.
hmm
Uh, to and like and it's worth saying that like if enough families do stay and fight and they can kind of push back against the state, that's a victory. So I
absolutely,
don't think there is an automatic. You have to look, is there a real and present danger to your
hmm
actual livelihood and to the actual well-being of your family? You have to consider these things.
oh, absolutely. Like yeah, if I were living in Minneapolis right now, the beautiful skyline behind me, um, if I were living there, we'd be gone like years ago. Like
Yeah,
2020, we
right.
would have put the house up for sale and gotten out of there.
Mhm.
And because you see like the crime rates are insane, and they don't even report all of it. You have to go to Crime Watch MPLS on Twitter to find out like what's actually happening, and it's horrific.
Mhm.
And it's so bad. And how could you raise children in this environment? How could you raise a family in a place like that? Well, you can't. But you go out to some of the suburbs in Minnesota; they're very nice. There's very good places there. I mean, a lot of them are lib dominated as well.
Yeah,
but
that's another
there's
thing.
pockets,
Like, I'd be okay with like a state of emergency action that would prevent these like liberals from exiting the city that they created, and they go into these like prior like they like the suburbs were relatively middle class conservative years ago, but now they're all becoming radicalized because
Oh
all the
yeah,
liberals are leaving. Like
yeah,
we need to build a wall around the cities
yeah. I
and
know.
let these liberals just stay there. So I'm against immigration in a lot of
Yeah,
respects too.
yeah. There's a state of exception that we need to.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. These are
Yeah,
these are political. Like there needs to be political solutions as
yeah.
well. You know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I mean, some of it too. Like, I think like a lot of people, like you look at like a state like Texas is a destination for a lot of people fleeing, um, blue states, and like you see, like Austin, Texas, for example, is growing because there's a large tech sector there, and so a lot of the Bay Area people, the people from LA, are going down to Austin, Texas. And so people are like, "Oh, California's going to turn, or Texas is going to turn into California because of all these Californians going there." And the flip side of it is, if you pass enough laws to make that place repulsive to them, right? If whether it's abortion or whatever, if you make the place a place they don't want to live, that isn't a destination for them. Same thing with like Idaho. There's a lot of Californians moving to Idaho.
Yeah,
It,
I know.
and the more repulsive you make that place to these people, it keeps them from coming.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and
That's
that's
why,
true.
that's why the culture war like really, really matters at a state level.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that you could like maintain your state, keep your red state red. Um, as best you can. I mean, there's obviously mass migration plays a huge role into a place like Texas as well, and to a certain extent Idaho. Um, but
That's
yeah,
one of the reasons I didn't move to Idaho. I mean, my family and I talked about it. I live in the Sierra Nevadas of California, and Boise's about 6 hours away. It wouldn't have been like a terrible move, and the mountains are similar. Boise is not very mountainous, but we talked about moving. But I just felt bad. Like I don't want to be part of that problem of disrupting these local
yeah,
cultures, and so I've
yeah,
decided to stay for the mean. Even though I'm probably more conservative than most of the Idahoans, anyways, I just don't want to be
yeah.
part of that problem. You
Especially in
know?
Boise. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, Boise
yeah,
is the Austin
it's
of
true.
Idaho. Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
So yeah, that's. I mean, again, it's such a silly controversy, but I think it goes to show that there is a tremendous amount of reform that needs to take place in the church that circumstances are sort of forcing. Because you see a lot of these guys who are saying these things, and they don't get very much, reaction as far as like people agreeing with them. And so some of it is, are they trolling? Are they trying to stir up controversy for the sake of controversy? Say, yeah, I think so. Um, but I honestly, I think this perspective, this very pietistic mindset, is dying. Right? People don't want to do that. It doesn't make any sense. It's insane, actually. And even their own guy, like the head honcho, John MacArthur, like you mentioned, he's spoken, sensibly
Mhm.
and reasonably about these things. And so it seems like a really bizarre reaction to, people kind of waking up and seeing the time of day. And so that makes me you know that makes me pretty glad that these fights are happening in one sense. I mean, I don't like it. I don't like it's ugly and nasty and rather stupid. But um I'm glad that they're happening because it forces, if
Conversation. Mhm.
well, and it forces people to think about these things,
Mhm.
and to think about the actually in a deep and serious way, and not just think about this question in particular, but things more broadly, that just thinking about politics as politics, for example, like it's forcing people to do that. It's forcing people to confront the political and cultural realities of the place that they live, and not to just surrender and say, "Oh, this world is not my home, so I'm just gonna wait to be martyred or raptured or whatever." Like people are done doing that. They're
Mhm.
sick of that being the response. Just the baseline assumption is like, well, it's all over, so what do we do? Like that's
Yeah. As if they would even
I don't want that.
exist if their ancestors did that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All of our
Yeah.
ancestors, if they had done
Yeah.
that. I mean, and so sort of the post-war 20th century conservative evangelical ethos that is really dominated is dying off.
Yeah.
And people are beginning to understand, no, we need to fight. We need to fight. We need to be able to, and part of fighting means you make tactical retreats, you consolidate strength, You oh wow, the water there is
Yeah, you like that?
it's camouflaged.
It's fresh. It's pure California river water.
Yeah, very nice. Um, and so yeah, people are understanding how you fight and how you fight strategically and tactically. That every battlefield is different. That there are different circumstances that you have to recognize to make the right decision to operate with wisdom. And so it's encouraging in that sense that people are doing that. They're engaging in a completely different way. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for it. I'm glad that this discussion is happening. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
I mean, you're right. Discussions are happening and those discussions are good. I think that we learn things from the conflict of opposing forces. That's what the Reformation was. Like
Yeah.
we were able to identify new areas of our own clarification by these, confrontations. And I don't think we should be afraid of them. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't have, I mean, all of the formal doctrine of the church from the Apostles' Creed onward is the result of conflict,
Hmm.
right? The Nicene Creed, all of the creeds of the Reformation and confessions in the Reformation are these distillations of what God's word says in the midst of very serious conflict over doctrine.
Hmm.
And so it's a similar type principle that I mean, you just look at all of the cultural fights that we're having, because you see these libs in conservative denominations say, well, I'm a member of the PCA or the OPC, a member in good standing, and I affirm all of the Westminster Confession of Faith. And it's like, well, but it doesn't say anything about women pastors. It doesn't say anything about feminism. It doesn't say anything about, affirming homosexuality or things like this, even though, I mean, by good and necessary consequence, it does. But nevertheless, right, they want to be, have the camel's nose under the tent to sneak these things in.
Hmm.
Because I'm totally doctrinally with you guys, totally 100%. And they're not. I mean, they're liberals. They are captured by the spirit of the age,
Hmm.
and it requires us to continue to fight that the Reformation didn't just end in the 17th century. That these fights continue to the present day, and there's different circumstances that we're fighting over. Right? There's different issues that we're fighting over that we have to reach agreement and unity on within the church. And so I'm grateful for the conflicts happening in that sense, because, at some point, when the next Reformation comes, or maybe we're in it, there will have to be a doctrinal statement about what is a woman, what is a man, right? How are they different? What does that mean?
Hmm.
How did God create the world? And all of this, right? That's the kind of stuff that's happening. It's good that it is, because we're getting clarity, right? We're proceeding forward. So anyhow, that I think that does it on that discussion. The next topic, the one we're probably going to spend the most time on here today, is just this day as we record, Thursday. The United States Supreme Court had a decision. What was even the name of the decision? It was I can't even remember, but it was
I get my news from Twitter, so I don't know.
I know. I couldn't even remember. Usually, the name, like the Dobbs decision or
Oh yeah.
Obergefell, or and it was Harvard and UNC versus someone. And so they sued these universities over their admission policies, and there was a 6-3 ruling today, striking down the admission practices of both Harvard and UNC, and establishing at least a new standard as far as affirmative action, striking down a formal affirmative action. So, having gotten your news from online, what can you tell us about that, CJ? What details do you know?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, people have recognized for a long time that we don't live in a meritocracy. We live the universities. Yeah.
What? You're telling me that for the first time.
um. Yeah, we don't live in.
Sorry,
We live.
I derailed you. We don't live in a meritocracy. No,
we don't. Yes, no. The institutions are trying to change the culture by picking winners and losers. Which I actually don't have a problem with, but they're picking the winners that they're picking are my enemies, and they're making these decisions in an attempt to undermine my culture and my way of life. So what's happening is it's being recognized that the left has never lived up to their own claims in the 1960s and 1970s about how we live in a colorblind society. That was all proven just completely factually incorrect over the last 50 years. We actually live in a very post-Western society, and there's a revolution at play, and they're trying to end the idea of like this colorblind neutral, culturally neutral situation, and the universities play a big part in that. And that's what's happening. And so what's happening is the conservative Supreme Court justices have challenged, have tried to put a roadblock here in that revolution and said that you can't make these types of decisions, race-based decisions, in order to benefit minorities. The historically oppressed or the historically discriminated against. They're trying to push back against that. So it's sort of a pushback by the advocates of colorblindness and meritocracy and liberal democracy. Yeah. That's how I would characterize it. And that's kind of a weird way to put it, because I don't think a lot of people are getting it like that. I think a lot of people are seeing it as like a victory of conservatism over liberalism. Actually, it's a restatement of liberal democracy, the post-war American order, against the excesses of the post-Marxist left, the new left. That's what's happening. Yeah. So I have mixed feelings about it. First of all.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, especially because
I'll let you. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, especially because within this decision, I haven't read the whole thing yet, and I will. At least the majority opinion, and then the dissenting one by Kentaji Brown Jackson. It one of the clauses they had in there, a paragraph they had in there, is that, you totally can, use. This is my very legal, technical way of saying, you totally can use, statements that promote diversity in the essays for, admission. You could judge them based on this. So like they leave them a caveat where they're still allowed to do, race-based affirmative action, just not formally. It has to be in this very informal sense. And of course, Harvard has a $60 billion endowment and a massive bureaucracy, like larger than many states have. And
they're one of the biggest hedge funds in the world.
Yeah,
they have bigger they have a bigger fund than like most all 50 states by far, and major corporations. I think it might be in the top 5 biggest hedge funds.
Yeah,
people don't know that it's massive.
Yeah. And so, if you want to talk about a big, juicy cash cow that's ripe for the picking, for any kind of right-wing regime that comes.
That reminds me. What we're gonna do when we take power is we're gonna seize their endowment, and we're gonna pay off the student loans of our friends.
Yeah.
And that's how
double the student loans of our enemies. That's
correct.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. We're not gonna set the pink-haired, like radical left-wing Marxists free from their debts. They're gonna have to stay under that burden for life. They're gonna be suppressed because they're not gonna be able to enact the revolution. And people who have 2 or more kids and are married will, see their bonds set free.
Men and women that are married. Yes.
Men and women that are married.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Biological men and women that are married. Yes. We'll debt jubilee for all of our people. And we're going to make the gender studies degrees pay for it, and Harvard as well. So that's what we'll do when we win. And so it's huge. This huge bureaucracy. So obviously, they can hire several hundred people if they want to review these essays and get the exact same racial ratio that they want to have.
Oh yeah, well they're going to have AI.
They're going to. Yeah.
And this is the thing. Like, okay, so if you're a right winger and you want to be subversive, you got to learn how to write the essays. It's just going to be AI people reading it. Like the people, like that's just all that's going to happen. It's going to be looking for keywords and key themes. You better be subverting it.
And you just have, they're all going to be written by AI anyway. So you just have ChatGPT say, write me an essay like I'm a poor black kid in Jackson, Mississippi or something. Yes. And like, if you write the essay, like they're not going to know, like they're not going to, I grew up, with the projects and so on and so forth. Like go ahead and do that. Who cares? Like you need to game the system as well. Absolutely. I mean, you need to be, we talked about this last week, this revolutionary vanguard of rightism, right? Well, that's how you do it, right? You get into Harvard, Elizabeth Warren style, and you subvert it that way. That's how you do it. I mean, to all the, 18-year-old, 140 IQ plus, the several, 17 and 18-year-old, 140 IQ plus listeners that we have, that's your mission. Go ahead and do that. So that's how we win. I think we should read some of these statements. There's two quotes that have been making the rounds that I think are worth reading. Which should we do? Kintaji's statement first, or the great Clarence Thomas? Let's hers is shorter. We'll do hers first.
Okay.
With "Let them eat cake" obliviousness today, the majority pulls the ripcord and announces, quote, "colorblindness for all," by legal fiat. By deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. And having so detached itself from this country's actual past and present experiences, the court has now been lured into interfering with the crucial work that UNC and other institutions of higher learning are doing to solve America's real world problems. No one benefits from ignorance. Although formal race-linked legal barriers are gone, race still matters to the lived experiences of all Americans in innumerable ways. And today's ruling makes things worse, not better. The best that can be said of the majority's perspective is that it proceeds ostrich-like from the hope that preventing consideration of race will end racism. Right? This is what she has to say. And of course, the way that you frame it, I think is absolutely correct. That this is not a great conservative victory in terms of like actual real conservatism. It's a victory for liberalism, right? Yeah. So we talked about this, several episodes back. Paul Gottfried's article where wokeness came from the weakness and the inability of liberalism to realize its own project. And so this is dialing it back to liberalism, not back to what an actual society that we had before, right? It's taking us back to the 1960s, not taking us back to anything resembling America.
Yeah,
right, at its founding until the 60s.
Yeah, so my perspective here is that this is an adjustment to legal interpretation, right? That's what's going on here. Is they're making some adjustments, about what is allowable. The problem is that when you begin to think politically, you begin to recognize that Harvard isn't going to be like, oh, we were wrong. We need to obey this new law. We need to not discriminate. What they're going to do is they're acting politically. They still have a political agenda. They're just going to adjust the way they play the game. They're just going to adjust. So the politics hasn't changed. The political, that friend enemy distinction has not gone away in this decision. And that's what people need to pay attention to. They need to be asking themselves, how is this going to be used against us? That's okay. People are gonna be like, oh, that sounds paranoid or whatever. This is a great victory. I think it's great. I think it's great in terms of like momentum.
Absolutely.
I think it's great in terms of like making the journalists freak out, which is always a prerequisite to victory. You have to make the journalists panic. You have to. That's just that's a prerequisite. But at the same time, you need to recognize that nothing substantially political has changed at all.
Not whatsoever. No, you're absolutely right. The revolution is continuing. It maybe hit a speed bump here, but Harvard already announced that, we're just going to keep doing this anyway. We're just going to use it.
That's how law works. Law is just a weapon that can be utilized in whatever way the sovereign, the political powers decide it can be employed.
Yeah. And so the entire superstructure, both legal, political, cultural, everything is centered around this religion of anti-racism, right? That's fundamental to all of it, and this did not change that at all, right? It hasn't. It won't be until there is a cultural revolution, the opposite direction, that excises that worldview, that ideology from our nation completely, right? That's when we've won. Is when there's a Supreme Court ruling that says, colleges can admit whoever they want to for whatever reason they want to, and we're not going to tell them why or what for, right? Or you along friend enemy distinction lines, right? If you came from a noble family, in America, I mean that's what the Ivy Leagues was in the past. It was for all the WASP blue bloods to go to, right? The really really rich people that are of high birth in America, right? That's what Harvard was. That's what Yale was. That's what all these places were. And only this scant meritocracy. If you had someone truly exceptional that comes from middle America, from the lower classes and the middle class, only someone truly exceptional would get in and be allowed into this club. And very very few were. Right, that's what the Ivy Leagues were. And there was nothing wrong with that.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, Harvard, when it was founded, like the type of education that you had to have to even get into Harvard prevented 95% of the American populace from getting in. So I don't have a problem with that. I'm not an equality of opportunity guy.
No, me neither.
So, yeah,
no, I think you have to have an elite. Right. Every society has one, even if the basis of your society is we don't believe in that, we're totally egalitarian. Okay. Yeah, sure. There always is an elite. There always is a group that's on top that rules. They're either going to be good or bad. They're either going to be for your people or destructive to your people. And for a long time in America, there was a natural elite that ruled the country, and they were pro-American. Yeah, how do you get back to that point, right? How do you get to a point again? I don't know if you can, quite honestly.
Yeah. Optimism is cowardice.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't think the toothpaste is never going back in the tube, right?
Yeah.
It's I mean the whole thing has to fall apart and be reborn for you, and that's maybe 500 years away from this happening. But nevertheless, you still have to conceptualize it. You still have to be able to think through what does this look like? What does victory look like? What does having a great civilization look like? And so that I think is a lot of this, is thinking in those terms. The more interesting, I mean, the Ketanji Brown statement is, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously she quotes this fake quote that French revolutionaries made up about Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. Totally fake, not real. If you heard that it was real, sorry, it's a lie, like a lot of history. Total lie. Of course she got it. Of course she used it.
Yeah, because she gets her history from Netflix.
and read it, exactly. And so, but I mean, some of this, I mean, it's I think it's Kofifi Annan, I think that's his tweet, or maybe someone else. The catchphrase that the woke are more right than the mainstream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's what she's saying here actually is, I mean, it's as silly and ludicrous as it sounds. In a sense, she's right that this colorblindness thing isn't going to work, right? It isn't that this thing you think is going to work is not, right? It's, I mean, I say it like the Dems are the real racists strategy of the right. That's never going to work. That's never going to bring you victory. It only further enshrines and entrenches the moral framing of your enemies.
Yeah,
always. That's what it does.
I think that's so true that the woke are more correct than the mainstream. Is that what he said?
Yeah.
No, I that's a really apt way to put it. I think in some ways, like, critical theory it should be helping the right think honestly about neutral world. That's the point. Critical theorists have recognized that liberal democracy, the American ideological framework, is not what people think it is. It's actually an imposition of a positive way of viewing politics. It's not this neutral. It's not this neutral framework. And so, I responded to this to Charlie Kirk when he shared her quote, and I just said,
read your tweet. Yeah, go ahead.
I said, well, the excerpt is, I said it's actually true, but it's basically true. Like, color blindness is said, it's a political myth. It's said to be like the legally mandated way that America does things. First of all, that's true. Color blindness is merely just like this myth, and it's been legally mandated, and it's a product of the 1960s. It's a liberal value that was put into place, and now it was attempted to be enforced by the liberal democratic regime. Of course, that's been undermined by the new left, but that's the way the 1960s post-war America was supposed to function on this colorblindedness. It's not true at all. And actually, it's the opposite of what Jackson says. In the real world, all the institutions, all the entertainment centers, the entire cultural apparatus, the administrative state, all the universities, the financial capital organizations, startup world in Silicon Valley, all of these institutions are against the white working class.
Yeah.
So
the white and the middle class. I mean, just white people in general, right?
Yeah,
everything but white elites.
Despite our claims of meritocracy and colorblindedness, there is racism built into the system, and it's anti-white racism. But I'm not going to play the racism card, but she's not wrong here. We're not a meritocracy.
No.
We are an anti-white revolutionary state.
Yeah, that's precisely what it is. And to try to like somehow ratchet it back to, oh, we're just gonna be colorblind now, right? We're not gonna see race, right? That's the grand vision of
they're wishing away. They're wishing away the political dynamics. Harvard is not backing down. They're going to change their strategies. All the universities are.
Yeah,
like the entire momentum, the entire bulk of our cultural bedrock is built for this purpose of opposing, heritage America.
Yeah, exactly. It is at the very core of everything in America is anti-white racism. I mean, that people have to understand that. They have to view it through friend-enemy distinction. That we are the enemy, right? You don't want to think along these lines. I mean, this goes back to Wolf's lone bulwark tweet. When you understand that that group of people in the United States is the enemy of every institution in the entire country, anywhere that there is power, whether it's financial power, political power, cultural power, religious power, all of these things, anywhere there's power, it is centered and arrayed against those people. And it's not like a coincidence. It's not like an accident. And you don't fight it by saying, well, we're just going to be colorblind now. We're going to pretend race isn't a thing. That's not. We've been doing that for 60 years. It doesn't work.
So Jackson is right. Then you can't just slap colorblind on it and pretend like the dynamics have gone away. She's correct. The problem is that she's correct,
but she likes it.
Yeah, but the out group is not her group. She's the in group. That's the problem.
100%. 100%. And so she wants that system to remain, but that she's correct in identifying what it is. And so again, until there is a reaction against it, a real serious reaction, not a let's just go back to the original Civil Rights Act when America was great, and so such a wonderful place and so peaceful and unified. That ain't gonna work. It's not. People have to get it through their heads that those days. I mean, not just past because they never were, but that strategy is intentionally built to not work, and it's not going to. So nobody wants to be like, oh, you need to have racial consciousness and things like this. We're not arguing that necessarily. You're simply saying that you're the out group, and the out group is based largely around what your race is, and that's it.
Well, unfortunately, it may take a little bit of consciousness. At least, you don't have to be like a white nationalist or something, an ethno-nationalist, but I do think consciousness, awareness of who you are is relevant, because that's how the enemy is defining their own lines of unity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's I mean, just look at
it's a hard topic, but I think consciousness is relevant.
Look at the Summer of George, man. Like they were tearing down, like in my state, they tore down the statue of Christopher Columbus in front of the state capitol. And what does he have to do with George Floyd? Well, in their minds, I mean, so a normie con would look at that and be like, what does this have to do with any of this? Doesn't make sense. Or they're tearing down, colonial generals, in like New England, the statues of these guys that never owned a slave or anything. Why are they doing that? What does that have to do with anything? And it's because, right, they hate all of the heritage of Western civilization. They hate all of the heritage of white people. They hate
symbology is so important. Symbols rule the world. There's that phrase, what's that? What's the website? I forget what it's called. I forget. Is it
I don't know.
Uh-oh. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Symbols rule the world, though. That's Google it. You'll
Yeah.
get the site.
Someone in the comments will help us.
Yeah, right.
Thank you all of our commenters who
There's
help us out.
There's the statue of Medusa's head being held off right after she was conquered, right?
Yeah,
There's
by
the famous
Theseus. Yeah.
Mhm. And now they have a new rendition of that where Medusa is the one holding his head up, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a symbolic claim about what is happening to Western civilization.
Yeah.
Right? These are very important. Statues being torn down are not arbitrary. They're not silly. They're not goofy. They're civilizational statements.
Yeah. They're saying what you revere, right? What your people revere and view as admirable and honorable and worthy of celebrating, we want to destroy. Mm-hmm. And so destroying Christian, and they'll say, "Oh, you did genocide against the Indians." All these things. That's ultimately not what it's about. It is about. I mean, it is about that because they conflate all of these things together, right? That whiteness is what's evil and must be destroyed. So they want to destroy the heritage of Western civilization entirely. Right. Yeah. They want you to not have one. They don't want you reading, classical literature. They don't want you reading your own history. This is why they don't teach it. They want it destroyed. I mean, it is very much a cultural revolution like Pol Pot in Cambodia, where you're at year zero and everything before is completely eradicated. Completely. Right. That's what they're doing. That's what you have to understand. And unless you adopt this mindset of, you're in the out group and it's largely along racial lines. And until you make that realization, right, you're going to be defenseless against it. You're going to be just uttering these really stupid, normicon shibboleths like, well, there's no race but the human race, man. It's like that's not an argument that means anything to these people, right? That's not an argument that's not what they're fighting. They're not fighting against, color blindness and all these kinds of things, right? That mindset is what gives them strength and power. Right. That's the next iteration of that mindset. It's its final form. It's right. Liberalism gone to seed. I mean, that's the whole point of Paul's article in Chronicles is that this stuff is just liberalism gone to seed. Like you adopt this colorblind society, which is impossible. And so you're going to get, you're going to get wokeness at the end of it.
Yeah.
Right. That's the only conclusion.
I mean, this is the point of like Sam Francis, his own. He digested Burnham's thoughts about liberalism, and he pointed out that the whole point of the liberal project was to neutralize Heritage America, so that they could put in their own vision into place. Which was an anti-white, anti-European civilization, and this has been going on for a very long time. Like I just had a conversation with I think his name is Nathan Paninsky or whatever from First Things. I had a conversation with him on the Chronicles magazine podcast about Raspel's Camp of the Saints book, and he pointed out that this has been like part of the New Left for a very long time. It's anti-white, but they couch it and they veil it behind things like color blindness so that people don't recognize it's coming, and then people think it's just this organic transformation. They don't realize this has always been the objective is to undermine European society and European legacies.
Yeah, I mean I think the best way of thinking of it is liberalism and post-war democracy and all of the the mid 20th century pieties. That is the plow going to the field and overturning the soil, right? It's primarily negative, right? It's taking away all of hierarchies that existed, all of the ways of life that previously existed, clearing those all out, and then leaving the field ripe for something else to grow, and that something else is ultimately wokeness, right? That's what it is. That is its function. That's what it does. I mean, that is, you talk about paleoconservatism. Paleoconservatism is recognizing that, recognizing liberalism and liberal democracy, and whatever you want to call what happened in America and in the West in the 20th century, as fundamentally revolutionary. But it wasn't revolutionary in the sense where, it's woke and it's doing all these things. It's the precursor to it. It's what has to happen before wokeness can take over, right? It is the, you just put it in biblical terms. It's the exorcist, right? Exorcising demons, even though you don't want to say like traditional society is a demon, but it leaves the house, right? Leaves the house empty, and then 7 demons worse than it come back, right? That's what's happened, basically. And so yeah, so Kentaji has a correct analysis, but of course she's on the enemy side, and so she thinks it's good, right? That's I think the takeaway that you can see from this. And so why don't I read, because there's some good things in the decision as well. So
yeah.
So,
I don't want to be totally contrarian.
Yeah. I think it's important too. I think it is.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, like these are good decisions for the sake of momentum.
Absolutely.
We
Just
can
like Dobbs.
we can crush the left.
Yeah,
they are defeatable.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not. They are not always going to win. They can be beaten, and I mean, we can discuss that later about strategies and how they can be beaten. But the opinion of Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas, who easily the best Supreme Court justice living. His decision actually is also very very astute politically. So here we go. Nor do Justice Jackson's statistics regarding a correlation between levels of health, wealth, and well-being between selected racial groups prove anything. Of course, none of those statistics are capable of drawing a direct causal link between race, rather than socioeconomic status or other factor, and individual outcomes. So Justice Jackson supplies the link herself: the legacy of slavery and the nature of inherited wealth. This, she claims, locks blacks into a seemingly perpetual inferior caste. Such a view is irrational. It is an insult to individual achievement and cancerous to young minds seeking to push through barriers rather than consign themselves to permanent victimhood. If an applicant has less financial means because of generational inheritance or otherwise, then surely a university may take that into account. If an applicant has medical struggles or a family member with medical concerns, a university may consider that too. What it cannot do is use the applicant's skin color as a heuristic, assuming that because the applicant checks the box for black, he therefore conforms to the university's monolithic and reductionist view of an abstract average black person. Accordingly, Justice Jackson's race-infused worldview falls flat at each step. Individuals are the sum of their unique experiences, challenges, and accomplishments. What matters is not the barriers they face, but how they choose to confront them. And their race is not to blame for everything, good or bad, that happens in their lives. A contrary, myopic worldview is based on individual skin color to the total exclusion of their personal choices is nothing short of racial determinism. Justice Jackson then builds from her faulty premise to call for action, arguing that the courts should defer to experts and allow for institutions to discriminate on the basis of race. Make no mistake, her dissent is not a vanguard of the innocent and helpless. It is instead a call to empower privileged elites who will tell us what is required to the level the playing field among castes and classifications that they alone can divine. He cites Gorsuch's concurring opinion, explaining the arbitrariness of these classifications. Then, after siloing us all into racial castes and pitting those castes against each other, the dissent somehow believes that we'll be able at some undefined point to march forward together into some utopian vision. Social movements that invoke these sorts of rallying cries historically have ended disastrously. Unsurprisingly, this tried and failed system defies both law and reason. Start with the obvious: if social reorganization in the name of equality may be justified by the mere fact of statistical disparities among racial groups, then that reorganization must continue until these disparities are fully eliminated, regardless of the reasons for the disparities and the cost of their elimination. If blacks fail a test at higher rates than their white counterparts, regardless of whether the reason for that disparity has anything at all to do with race, the only solution will be race-focused measures. If those measures were to result in blacks failing at yet higher rates, the only solution would be to double down. In fact, there would seem to be no logical limit to what the government may do to level the racial playing field. Outright wealth transfers, quota systems, and racial preferences would all seem permissible. In such a system, it would not matter how many innocents suffered race-based injuries. All that would matter is reaching the race-based goal. So some of this statement by by Thomas, I mean, like we said, it goes back to, well, let's just get back to colorblindness and equality of opportunity and so forth. But I think he's also identifying in here what wokeness is, right? He's identifying, especially the latter, this last paragraph, right? He's identifying that how revolutionary it has to be, that, and he sort of, tiptoes to the line that, that there are real racial differences. Now he is, a remarkable man, right? He has advanced to, the highest levels despite all sorts of barriers and problems and difficulties he had to face, and reached the United States Supreme Court, based largely on how brilliant the guy is. And so, you see this, it's interesting because, she gets on the Supreme Court because of this entire system, like this affirmative action system. And so he's tearing it apart, right? Showing just how destructive it is. And the ultimate form of it is that if there are real racial differences between groups of people, that affirmative action isn't fixing, the only thing you can do is continue to double down on it and continue to apply, even more destructive affirmative action policies to try to somehow reach this level of equity. And so, I think this is some of the most honest stuff about wokeness that, I mean, it's funny, like only he could write it, I think, because, he's like the lone black conservative justice. So he's allowed to speak more honestly than like a white pundit would. But he shows this, like, what is their goal in ending racism? Or you see at the end zone of an NFL field, right? End racism. Well, how exactly do you do that? Right? How do you do that? How do you bring this about? Well, it must be through massive wealth transfer, right? Take all of the inheritances of white people and all the property that they own, all the businesses they own, and so forth, and just transfer them to black people, and then have essentially a communist system where everybody gets the same. But then what happens in 100 years when disparities rise again? Right? What do you do then? Right? I mean, that's what he's bringing out here. I mean, it's interesting. So he's not totally like, well, we should allow discrimination. We should allow universities to operate the way they did 100 years ago, where only the cream of the crop get in, only the the wealthiest and brightest and the most highborn people in a society are allowed into these elite universities. And he's not going to say that, and I don't. No one would expect him or anyone else on the court to say something like that. But I mean, I think it's largely really, really good. And he recognizes, or begins to recognize, the political here. That's the thing that struck me, is he begins to see that, wokeness for what it actually is. I mean, what are your thoughts on Thomas's opinion, CJ?
Yeah, no, I think it's the classic like liberal take, classical liberal, and it's fine. I think it's a great takedown of the problems with that type of like left-wing vision of things. This obsession with equality and the need to politically enforce it, and politically solve problems. And it's like trying to like push a raft underwater. Like every time you get one side down, the other side pops up, and so you're constantly, until you have the whole thing just completely totalitarian. You're on every single aspect of this to make sure that you've got your way, and it's just eventually it's going to explode back upward. But exactly. he doesn't get into that, and what that would mean historically. But it's true. I think it's a good response, and it's a good application of English traditional law about the problems with this type of politicized leveling.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the thing that he says about, I mean, to speak, I mean, we're of course always very, very negative about liberalism and liberal democracy and individualism and so forth. But I mean, he makes a good point that there are extraordinary individuals.
Well, what I'm critical
and he's one of them. you know?
What I'm critical of is the absolutization of those themes. Those themes
Yes.
are good within a political order. You
Yeah.
can have like the appreciation for individuality and merit and hardworkingness and the ability to like achieve your own objectives within a political order. But if you have absolutize them,
Yeah.
that's when you get destruction. So I,
Yeah.
I'm not against like historicist liberalism.
Yeah.
I'm against like enlightenment liberalism, where you can eradicate society and recreate your own blueprint for society. That's what
Yeah.
I'm against. And what he's
Yeah.
arguing for is really in line with, the British liberal tradition, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And ultimately, it's like, yeah, I want there to be more guys like Clarence Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's funny because it's like, oh, people watch it like, oh, here's but these white guys, they're probably a bunch of white nationalists or something. And it's like, I love Clarence Thomas. I want there to be more guys like him, because he is an exceptional individual, and I'm glad that he's on the court. And he it's funny because like Kentaji Brown is arguing for herself, and the whole reason that she's on the court, right, is just affirmative action. We have to have a black lady on the court, says Joe Biden, and he goes and gets one. And Thomas, on the other hand,
Earned
right,
it.
he
Yeah,
earned it
he
the
really
hard
did.
way. I mean, he came from
Despite
great
Joe
poverty.
Biden. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
Despite Joe Biden. Yeah,
not not not
precisely.
not not to be a boomercon, but yes.
But he is. I mean,
Yeah.
he was the worst in his
Yeah.
hearings. Any of you haven't seen the videos back during his confirmation, it's worth watching.
Yeah.
Back when Joe Biden's mind still worked, to whatever extent it ever did.
Mhm.
Uh, and so, but this, I mean, he's arguing for himself as well, like that he made it through there through hard work and his own God-given ability.
Mhm.
And so within the a proper moral order and framework,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing.
It
That's
is.
wonderful.
It is.
But we want, yeah, like you said, we want to take the exception and absolutize it over everything.
Right.
And that's insane.
Right.
Absolutely. So we've gone on for almost an hour here. What anything else about this decision? I mean, to wrap it up, what do you think it means long term? I mean, we have momentum, like you said.
Mhm.
And I agree. And the same thing
Okay.
with Dobbs.
Yeah.
We had momentum there, but
Yeah.
there's still almost
I
as many abortions happening in America as they were a year ago. So what does it mean?
I do worry about this being used against conservative colleges that are recognizing the friend enemy distinction, and they're trying to hire people um, along cultural lines, and they're going to get slammed by using this as a precedent for being discriminatory.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
So,
wouldn't they be able to, I mean, do the same thing Harvard is and just say, well, we read the guy's essay and he wants to
yeah, but
defend Western civilization,
you're thinking legally, not
I
politically.
know, I
You got to
know,
think
I know,
politically. Like,
I
how are
know.
people going to use this?
That's true.
Like this, like the left uses the law to their advantage. The right or conservatives, the center, doesn't know how to think about things like this. The left recognizes, like Harvard did, that there's always loopholes, and they're going
Yeah,
to be pursuing loopholes. Conservatives don't pursue loopholes.
no,
Conservatives say, well, that's what the Constitution said. There's nothing we can do about it. The left says, how do I exploit this for my benefit?
yeah, yeah.
So I do worry about efforts toward non-discrimination. I do worry that they're going to be employed against our own desire and wherewithal to defend ourselves and our people and those that we identify with.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I think it could be. You're right.
No, seriously, like what,
Yeah,
like if I created a school that was meant to help like young white kids that were passed over because they didn't
yeah.
fit like an agenda,
They
that's
wouldn't. They can't get into Harvard. They 100 years ago they'd be candidates to get into Harvard, and now they
yeah.
can't get
So
in.
if I start a school to to help those people, like that's illegal now because they were very clear that discrimination based on race is a problem.
Yeah, yeah,
These
that's true. Yeah.
these can be used against us for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I think so. If it can be used against you, it will be.
Hmm.
Is the name of the game. But I think in terms of the political, in the near and long term, I mean, what does this portend? What does this tell us about these fights as they go forward? Because I mean, part of me thinks, the Charlie Kirk types, the big movement conservative types will, make it a notch on their belt and say, all right, we got one, we got a big win, and then just rest on their laurels and think that, all right, we're back to a colorblind America. Isn't it great? Um, you know, so part of me thinks that's going to happen. But at the same time, the revolution is still continuing, right? And getting worse. And so circumstances are such that you can't pretend those things, right? You look at the reaction in the 2022 election, and just everything that the left has done in the last year since the Dobbs decision, and the fight over abortion is just as strong as it is to pursue it, to push it, is just as strong as it has ever been. And it will continue to be that way. But I mean, the flip side is that there are people on the right who are fighting equally as hard against it, and especially in many red states. And so I'm hopeful, in my opinion, that things along these lines will continue. I mean, part of it is, I mean, you see like that goofball Duke Kwan, tweet like, "I'm so angry," or "I hate that Asians were used to end affirmative action," or whatever. And it's just, and I just tweet like,
that's the momentum part. Like, yeah, like I said, like taking off the Twitter activists and the journalists.
Yeah,
you have to do that. Like, you're not going to win. You're not going to win if they're not in tears.
It has to happen. You have to drink liberal tears and so forth. But I mean, it was comical because it's like, wait, like, you want your own people to suffer as long as white people suffer more? Is that what you're saying? That's literally what he's saying. That's literally that's their mindset. Yeah.
It is their mindset.
I hate white people is what that tweet means.
Right.
But I think some of it is just getting people to recognize that, like, these people hate you. They hate you, and they hate you because you are white. Like, that's why they hate you. And it's okay. It's not like a bad, immoral thing to like come to that realization. And so many, especially young men, in conservative churches and so forth, are coming to this realization that these people hate me. I mean, they hate me because I'm a Christian. They hate me because, they hate me because I'm not a homosexual or some other perverted form of sexuality. They hate me for all these things, all the things that wokeness hates. But at the core of it is that it's that you're white, and they connect all those things to whiteness. They connect heterosexuality to whiteness, or heteronormativity to whiteness. They connect nuclear families to whiteness. They connect all of Western heritage to whiteness. They connect all of these things, right, to that's at the core of it, is their hatred of white people.
Well, these cultural institutions were definitely benefited by and emphasized by Europeans. So, like, I don't have much of a problem with that. It's, whatever.
Yeah, like, and it is. I mean, that's what you have to recognize. And it's like, for whatever reason,
we were a Eurocentric culture.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, like, the gospel took root in Europe. Right? That God set up the Roman Empire, and the gospel went in there, and all of what was the oikumene, right, the Greco-Roman world, became Christian. And then northern, it advanced over centuries into northern and then into Eastern Europe. And that's where it was for 2,000 years, mostly. And they hate that. I mean, and so they're antipathy to Christianity and to whiteness. It's in tandem. It's both in the same. Not that Christianity is white or anything, but the historical circumstances are that that's where it was. And so they put those two things together in their minds, right? They don't separate them at all, like a white Christian would. We're always very careful. No, it's not. Whiteness has nothing to do with Christianity. Well, I mean, in like a theological sense, yes, you're right. It doesn't, but in a cultural, historical sense, of course it does. Of course it does. And your enemy knows that, and knows it well, and and by employing this, oh, well, there's neither Jew nor Greek, what, male or female, blah, blah, blah. Like, employing that verse in that way, that, oh, it's not a white thing. It's like, well, in one sense it is, in one sense it isn't. And that's okay, right? You could be glad that your great grandpa, converted and got baptized, right? Took off his Thor necklace and became a Christian. That's good. That's wonderful. You can be glad that happened, and that all of Europe did the same thing over time. You could be grateful for that, right? And so that I think is part of it, and so some of it is like, well, is it, you say racial consciousness or whatever? No, just admitting you are what you are. You come from a particular heritage, and and to be proud of it and grateful for it, and give thanks to God that's how history played out. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's the antidote to fighting this stuff is not adopting this liberal colorblind view. It's simply to admit historical reality and to say I'm glad that Europe was Christianized once, and I pray that it'll be Christianized again. And the society, America came out of a European context, and it's going to be Christianized once again as well. Like that is what we should want, and that these are our people that we have a particular affinity for, that are different than other groups. That's okay. Like that it doesn't, you don't have to become like a Wignat or something like that, right? You just have to say, well, we have a certain heritage and we're grateful for it. And make no bones about it, not apologize whatsoever for your ancestors or anything like that. I mean, what do you think about that? Am I being too edgy and too radical here? What do you think?
No, you're the perfect edginess.
The right amount of spiciness here.
Yes. Not too dull and not too edgy.
Oh, I try not to be dull.
I approve.
If anything. But I mean, what is your take on that? I mean, obviously, all of these things together are being attacked and destroyed. It isn't just one aspect.
I actually do think people disagree with me on this, but I do think the anti-European is sort of a veil or a proxy for anti-Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not going to be really revealed until there's so much self-hatred among Europeans, people that are derived from Europe. And all of our cultural symbols have been so humiliated and demoralized until it becomes very clear that it's really just a front for Christianity, because Christendom was created by Europeans. Christianity can benefit individuals from any nation.
Yeah.
But Christendom itself was a European. God used the continent of Europe and those peoples to spread the gospel institutionally, to spread the Christian faith institutionally. That's the mechanism that God used, is European peoples. And it's for anybody of any nation can benefit from it, and other cultures can and should benefit from it as well. But I do agree with you that God used Europe in a specific way, to achieve this end.
Well, and it's interesting too, because it's funny or ironic or whatever you would want to say, that the great 18th century or 19th century missionary movement happened because all of the European powers had colonies in the rest of the world. So there was like Hudson Taylor in China, or the missionaries that went to India. Like, they're able to go to India because the British Raj ruled over India. They're able to go to Africa because all of these colonies are set up in Africa, and missionaries are able to go there.
They were able to go to China because of Nixon.
Yeah, well, yeah. In American missionaries were, after the Communist Revolution, they're able to go to China because of the British opening China up to trade, and setting up Hong Kong and colonies like that. That's why Hudson Taylor is able to go there. He didn't just get on a boat and decide to show up like the Japanese did in Japan, or rather the Catholics did in Japan. That was a different kind of missionary work, where they're going, and it's if you've seen it's not a great movie. It's good, but the message is not great. The Scorsese movie Silence, like, you see that, right? That's what they did. They just showed up in Japan, right? There was a little bit of European trade there, but it was a mostly closed off society and incredibly hostile to Christianity. And there are pockets of Christendom there, even still today, and in Nagasaki, the city that we destroyed, for reasons. We can get into that. It's kind of a conspiracy theory, although I think it's just obvious why they destroyed that city in particular. But nonetheless, like all of these missionary movements happened, this global missionary movement happened because European powers had colonies, and we think, oh, colonization is so bad and so evil and so horrible. But it's like there are millions of Nigerian Christians now because because Britain colonized Nigeria. And they're all like Anglicans. There's charismatics and others, evangelicals mixed in, but it's like the largest Anglican country in the world, really. I mean, if you think about it, England isn't really anymore. And it's this legacy of colonization. And they look, but the thing is, like woke people, they look at that and they see Christianity in all these, third world places, and they resent it and despise it. I mean, look at Ted Cruz's reaction to Uganda. I mean, Uganda was also a British colony that, where the gospel was preached, and there's all sorts of Christians there now. And they hate it. They hate that. They hate that the gospel went to these places. And so I think we should just have an honest perspective on it, that God blessed Europe in this particular way, and he used Europe as a vehicle to spread the gospel to the entire planet. That's good. That's a good thing. We should be grateful for it and glad of it. And so, yeah, I mean, and like the tandem of attacking, whiteness or European Western civilization and attacking Christianity together, right? I think they go in tandem, even though, again, we're not saying that Christianity is white. It's only for white people, right? We're not saying that. Woke people maybe think that, but that we're not saying that. But there is this strong connection between the two, and it's because they hate the God that creates civil and sustains civilization, the God that creates order, right? Political order, cultural order, everything just creates reality. They hate how he built the world. They want to revolt against that and create their whole alternate reality, right? They want to turn back all the forces of nature that God created that make societies function, right? Including male and female. They want to do that on the one hand. And they also want to eradicate the God that spoke in his word.
Yeah.
Right. They want to do both of those things, right? They're attacking. I mean, if you want to put it in like this, apologetic terms, they're attacking natural revelation and special revelation together. Right. That's what this is about. That's what they're doing. Fundamentally, it is a revolt against God himself. So they hate Christianity, and they hate civilizations that were, built out of it, and that civilization that God used to transform the world, right? They hate that. They hate all of it altogether. So, I mean, it's a difficult, complex topic, and of course, fraught with all sorts of, superstition. I would say that we've imbibed just by osmosis, that we're supposed to, have this like hatred of ourselves and our own history. So you can't ever speak well of it, or even speak well of your own, what you are as a white guy. Or you can't say that's good. You can't say it's okay to be white. That's a hate crime. But so you have to overcome that and say, no, it's good. It's fine. It's great. We had a great civilization, and God used it. And I prayed that he will, build the same thing up once again, even better. But that's what you have to get over, I think, in order to fight wokeness, is understand what exactly precisely they're attacking. And you can't do that without a fully well-formed understanding of Western and classical history, right? You have to know it. You have to know, and it can't be from these like woke sources that, people that think that "let there be cake" actually was said by Marie Antoinette. Things like this, right? You can't do that, right? You can't do that. So that's right. That's the call to action. Read history. Read history from old books. Anything else? We got to wrap up here.
Nope, I agree. Let's call to action. Go read a book.
That's right.
All right. Yeah, I haven't written anything new, but I got to run because I have another recording. So at Contra Mundum is where I could. It's where I do all my Twitter takes. So.
Yeah, and I have some more stuff coming for Gab News. I had an article last week. I have another one coming tomorrow, and we're out of time here. We didn't save any time for We're All Gonna Make It, unfortunately. Maybe we'll be able to have him on next time. But for all of us here, for CJ, for me, thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe and share this. We love the comments. Please, tell us what you think. Tell us, where we're right, where we're wrong, especially where CJ's wrong. And that will do it for this week. You all have a great week, and we'll see you next time.